As the vessels, bearers, and nurturers of life, women play a vital role. With it being the 100th year anniversary of gaining the right to vote in the United States, and Mother's Day being around the corner, I felt it was appropriate to celebrate their voices. Today, we have two families who are offering their voices and their opinions, Tiffany and Nikki, and they're going to give some insight on the perspective of specifically Black American women's voices. Now, they represent themselves, but a lot of times you're going to hear them say things that probably represent culture in general. It will totally fill you up. So, get yourselves ready, and let's go. And today on Voices, this one is near and dear to my heart. It's near and dear like my mama is near and dear. I have to say mama specifically because that's sort of the level that we're going to go to. I think we live in a world where race matters. In addition to race mattering, we have to understand that we are further classified in the subgroups once we go past race. And specifically in the United States, we have racial groups and classifications that generally go men, women, and if we're going to go through hierarchy in society, we have white man, white woman, black man, black woman. And so today we want to address solutions to help raise Black women from where they are, not because they deserve to be there, but because the light needs to be shined on them on how they should be elevated and that they are at a much higher level than anyone in society knows, and that they should be appreciated in a more boisterous way. Joining me today in this conversation are two near and dear friends to me and their spouses. Now, you can choose however you want to call them as far as that goes. But I have Tyree and Tiffany joining me, and Nikki and Donnie. And I'm really excited about this conversation because this is one that was brought to me because it needs to be addressed. And at this time, while we have time to sit in our houses and think about where we are and think about what we're going to do when we're released from quarantine, we can release from quarantine knowing we can appreciate a group of people in a more overtly public way. So with that being said, no person can introduce themselves better than themselves. So I'll have Tyree and Tiffany introduce themselves first, followed by Nikki and Donnie. So thank you for being
here. Hey, thanks, Lou. It's Tyree Simmons here. As stated before, I'm Tyree. My wife is Tiffany. Currently have two boys, 14 and 9. Been knowing Lou for a long time. I think this is my second podcast with him, and just delighted to talk about the topic at hand as my 14-year-old coming down the stairs, and I'm trying to keep him quiet. Babe?
Yes. Tiffany Simmons. I'm originally from Los Angeles. Proud of that. I've been married to Tyree Simmons for 15 years, I think. It might be 16 years. Anyway, we have a 14-year-old son and a 9-year-old son who bring us a lot of joy and a lot of excitement. I have, in terms of my education, I have an undergraduate degree. I also have a law degree. I've had a myriad of careers. I've taught in an urban environment, in an urban school, 6th grade for about 5 years. But now I'm recently back into the corporate world, which is where I belong. Happy to be back there.
All right. And Nikki and Donnie.
Hey, so I'll go first. Donnie Campbell. I think this is like my 4th time on the podcast, and I still haven't come up with a decent introduction. But I will say this is my first appearance with my wife, so I think I'll actually say something of value and be halfway responsible this time.
Okay.
So Nikki McCall, Donnie and I have been married about 2 years. I have a background in political science as well as a master's in finance and economics. We both work in the finance world, and we have 2 lovely young kids who we spend a lot of time with.
I love it, and I think it's very interesting because you bring diverse backgrounds. It's already the first step in showing value, right? Now, I was thinking of asking a loaded question first, but that wouldn't be fair because I was going to say, well, what do you think the world perceives Black women as, right? But I feel like we'll get through that as we progress through the questions. So one question that I think is a really prevalent question, and I'll have Donnie and Nikki go first, and then followed by Tyra and Tiffany, is why do you think Black women behaviors, and I say quote unquote behaviors, are mainstreamed, but Black women themselves are not mainstream?
So I guess I'll chime in on this one first as my daughter talks. So I think part of it is that the behaviors that we exhibit, I think people think they're cool, right? So there's always that need to fit in and be, I think, normalized. And so the behaviors, people hang out with Black people, especially Black women. I grew up in a neighborhood where most of my friends were white. So I was always the cool person. So you had white girls who liked to be like me. They imitated me. But when they go into the older generations or outside into society, they may not feel as comfortable being themselves or being like me. So they take on parts of my persona, but they don't necessarily bring me to the party with them. And I personally experienced that a lot as I went through my undergrad and my younger years in life. I went to Syracuse. So I had a lot of, white friends who were just down for the cause. We hung out. But when it came time to have events or things like that in public, they weren't as eager to be my friend around their white friend. And so I think part of it is they like the behavior, they like the things we do, what we stand for, and we're considered cool. But when you have to let us be in the space and kind of own the behavior, they don't want to give us the credit for it. And so I think that's a big part of it, is just giving credit where credit's due, and no one wants to do that.
All right, and Tiffany and Tyree?
So when I hear that question, for me, I think of, in terms of behavior, I kind of narrowed it down to physicality. I think that we are imitated, our physicality is imitated, like big lips and, big behinds and, cornrows. I think it was Kim Kardashian that was kind of in the news for wearing cornrows, and she attributed that hairstyle to Bo Derek, a white actress, who actually also culturally appropriated those braids. So I think a lot of our physicality is imitated. And again, I think the Kardashians come up. I think, what was the other girl? Miley Cyrus, kind of twerking and kind of all that. So our physicality is imitated. But I don't think that we get the credit for that, for us being the original woman. And Lou, you're a historian, you know good and well that we are the original woman. So our blueprint is the best, right? Our blueprint is, close to the originator. So, I think that the physicality part is imitated, and I think you come up against issues with cultural appropriation, and all of that. And I think I was reading something the other day where they were saying that they want our rhythm, right, but they don't want our blues. So they want to jam with us, but they don't want ways that we're impacted as a community.
And so I want to throw my 2 cents in there, coming from a different angle. Usually people like to associate themselves with power. And unfortunately, our power is not advertised to be dominant, but nature has a funny way of showing what is dominant and what is not. Okay, man, we only got 10 minutes remaining already. So, what I'm saying is, people are attracted to our style, whatever you like. Nikki and my wife are saying, our style, our physical attributes, those are dominant power traits. However, the way a Black woman is portrayed in media through advertisement is not cool outside of a protected group to be like her. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Outside of the protected groups and the nuance of your friends and your cliques, when it comes out to private, the way Black women are portrayed, it's not cool to be that way. It's not cool to be with them. It's not cool to be seen or be acting like them, which is not. It's not a true narrative at all, in any sense.
I agree. It's a kind of caveat question because of this is that, so why do you think they don't want to give credit? And I say they, I heard that earlier, and I really feel bad for using the word they, because it's a connotation of everyone else but Black people, but it kind of is true. And so, I mean, this is open for any one of you. Why do you think they, quote unquote, don't want to give credit?
Well, I'll chime in first, I guess. I think it's part of the fact that it takes a lot to admit that you want to be like someone else. And historically, it would be hard. And I'm from the South, right? And so I have friends that were my best friends from growing up, and they're really great people. But when they go home to their parents when I was a kid, they weren't allowed to say, "Hey, Nikki's my best friend." And even it's not like I grew up in the 1950s. It's just what it was. And so I think it's really admirable for them to want to be like us, but I think they're afraid to actually say, "Hey, I think what that Black woman is doing is great. I think she's really cool. I think she's powerful, and I want to be like her." Because I think they are afraid of what society is going to say to them. So there's two pieces of the coin. There are the women who actually appreciate other Black women and they admire us, and it's a good thing, right? They're okay. Then there's the other people who don't give us any credit for it at all, and it's actually a slap in the face, because they actually want to own it and take it over. And for me, I have a lot of those friends, like I said, who appreciate who I am, and they'll say outright they like me not because I'm Black, but because of who I am, and they don't let the color of my skin kind of dictate whether or not they can admire and be like me. But then you have others who truly, they still like what I am about, they like who I am, but because I'm a Black woman, they don't feel that they need to give me credit for the things that I do.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, and especially moving from California to Texas, I realized that people like to hold on to a perceived sense of superiority. People like to hold on to a perceived sense of superiority. I grew up in California, and the education that I received was like very varied. I learned about different cultures. I could appreciate everybody. And I went to school with Blacks, whites. We all appreciated, each other's culture. I'm in Texas now. When I send my children to school, they basically only taught Texas history for like 8 years. They didn't get any. They taught the Alamo over and over and over and over again. I mean, I remember my 4th grade son had a project about Jimmy Crockett, and I thought he was a fictional character. I learned that he was a real character, and I'm like, why do they keep on perpetuating this as if Texas is somehow superior to the other states? I don't understand that. I think people like to hold on to a sense of superiority. Texans don't want to let that go, right? That other states are better than them, or that other countries are better than them. And I think to some degree that extends to race. It extends to white women. They don't want to let that go, that they are the standard of beauty. They don't want to give that up. People like power. People like a sense of feeling that they're better than somebody else. And I know, Lou, when you mentioned Brazil, when I think of Brazil, I think of Gisele Bündchen, right? But she's like Brazil. And I don't think that's really reflective of what the population really looks like. But she, for some reason, is the face of Brazil. So people don't want to give that up, that this is the standard and Texas is better than everybody else. They don't want to give that up. And if you confront them with that, they're, I don't know, angry about it. When I say Texas, what? When I went to school, the history of Texas was a chapter. It wasn't year after year, but they hold on to that. Texas is the best. The Alamo is the best.
And
That's
Tiffany,
interesting. Go ahead.
when you mentioned the kids, it just brought another thought to mind, because my daughter's 6, and so she can go to school, and there are kids, and they're young kids, right? And so if she has on a new flashy pair of shoes, everyone wants to be her friend, and they love her, and they're playing with her nonstop. But when she doesn't have something that they want or that they think is cool, then she has trouble finding friends, and they outcast her. And I think that simple example is kind of how it is. It's like when we are cool and mainstream, it's okay to want to be Black. But when you're not, then they want nothing to do with us. And again, I throw up air quotes when I say they, because it's not everyone, but you have a certain group, and that's that kind of misappropriation of our culture.
The interesting thing, I wrote this down. This is a question I asked a couple of people just because it's in my head. And so you all keep saying it, so now it's perpetuating in my head over and over. What's more powerful than attention? Like, I think that's really a thing, because I've asked, is there anything more powerful than attention? People will say power, but power is not about power. It's about attention. You want eyes on you. And so I really think that's a real question, because I think that's what the fear is that you take attention away from someone if you was the beautiful thing or you're the cool thing. And so to say that person gave it to me or that person influenced it, makes it very, very interesting. I don't know. I mean, do you want to answer that?
I think security is in its part, it's tied to that attention aspect, but I think security and feeling comfortable in who you are is some of that. Because like I personally don't think I like to go for attention, but I feel that when I am in a room, it gravitates to me sometimes. And it's not because I'm seeking it, but more so because I'm secure in who I am. And so when you're genuine, you just automatically kind of get that attention. And I think a lot of times it's that security in who you are that people look for.
Right.
I think other than security, attention, I think the ability to control is very, very powerful. And what I mean is, let's just say, just for the sake of our president just said about the disinfectant, the way people are piggybacking off what he said and controlling the narrative of stupidity is very, very powerful. So powerful for the next day, he took no questions. It was a 20-minute session. You see what I'm saying? So controlling, and it's just like the narrative. Our narrative as Black Americans, as Black African Americans, women, the narrative has been controlled to the point that we don't know the origin. We don't know where it started, but we've been controlled of this is how it is. This is where. So that control thing is important.
I love those answers, and I think it leads to this question specifically: do Black women want, need, or seek acceptance from society to advance specifically? Because I think Black women are always going to be who they are, but do they need those one of or all three of those things to advance in the society, specifically in the United States? So I'll go Nikki and Donnie first, followed by Tyree and Tiffany.
So I would say that it depends on what stage of life a Black woman is in, because I'm 35. And I think had you asked me that question when I was in college and I thought, I had to conquer the world and I needed a lot of friends and people to accept me to get there, then I may have said that, yes, you need society to accept you. And I may have been trying to fit in. But then as I grew, and especially when I traveled outside of America, that was really important for me as an adult. And I also lived in New York for 10 years. But so when you go and you experience being a Black woman in other cultures outside of the South, specifically for me, you just begin to appreciate who you are. And you actually see that others are trying really hard to be like you are. So the things that you're trying to hide or diminish are actually the things people are seeking out, and they're paying for corporate courses to teach. So I work in corporate finance. I'm in corporate America. I can go in a room, and I've been in rooms, board meetings, where I can own the conversation without any hesitation. And so when I was in college, I wanted to be quiet, actually. I felt that I had too much attention, that people thought I was too forceful. But now in corporate America, that's what actually has gotten me to where I am. And so I think depending on the stage of life that you're in, you eventually learn that you should own all of the traits that you have as a Black woman and even as a woman. And that if you just continue to progress in that way and focus on the things that you have, that you don't need everyone else's acceptance, because no matter what you do, they're not going to accept you anyway unless they want to. And so I think once you get to that place in your life, then you don't seek those things.
That's true. That makes sense. Tyree and Tiffany?
So I kind of thought about this in, like I always do, in 70 different ways. The first thing I was thinking about was, do we want to fit in just in terms of the way women overall are viewed, right? Like we want to be married, we want the house, we want the kids, and we want to have it all. And I think in that regard, Black women do want that. Now, that's a whole nother conversation of whether or not we're allowed that. And I think that's what I talked to you, Lou, about in terms of whether we can have it all, and the husband and the kids and kind of all that. But I think in that way, how women are viewed, or how we grow up wanting the husband and the house, we do. I think from a physical standpoint, in terms of, how we view ourselves, how we view our bodies, I don't think we want to fit in that way. I think we're fine with a little bit of extra this, a little bit of extra that. You have Lizzo out there and, some other, healthy role models. So from a physicality standpoint, I don't think we try to, have bulimia. I'm from LA. So, a lot of people there have eating disorders and kind of all that. I don't think we want to fit in that regard. I think our hair has taken a journey And I think when I grew up, wanted to fit in. I mean, my mom put a relaxer on my hair when I was 4 years old, 5 years old. But now when I go to the beauty salon, it's very rare to see anybody putting, what they call the creamy crack on their hair. And then so I think our hair has taken a huge trajectory in terms of how we feel about our hair. And that's sometimes we want to fit in, sometimes we don't, sometimes we have to. So that's a whole kind of another conversation. And then I thought about colorism. How do we want to fit in with regard to that, right? You have, Kelly from Destiny's Child, who I absolutely love and think is gorgeous, right? But how come when nobody buying her albums and people was buying Beyonce's albums, right? Does it have to do with colorism? And so I think we're still struggling with that, but I don't think that that's an American thing. I think that's a worldwide thing because of colonialism. And again, that's a whole nother conversation. So I think partially we want to fit in, but partially we don't, I guess.
So Nikki took my thunder because I was really going to say that Black women want to fit in until she made the excellent difference between being a young Black woman and then being a real woman, right? So here's what I'm going to say about a Black woman. Once again, I'm from the South. Being married to my wife for the past 15 years has made me understand that when I walk in a room with her, I have the man cheat code. I have the most powerful, sought after specimen in the world right next to my side. And the fact that when we start introducing ourselves and I heard Nikki's voice and I said, well, I'm talking to another queen. I didn't used to think that, right? The power that they hold, the mystery behind how they survived all of what happened back in the day and how they still continue to produce life, to produce kings and other queens. These women are phenomenal. And we as men are lucky to have them right next to us to be able to share and learn from them, even though they are seem to be the lowest thing on the totem pole. And I think that's kind of how we started this conversation of why is it that us Black men are not propping them up enough. And, you was watching the draft yesterday. You see what I'm saying? Amen. I don't have to say too much, but you see who's being propped up and who's not.
I actually have a follow-on question for that because my next question specifically is about and Tiffany specifically brought this to my attention. I think it's a good one. And Nikki, you're kind of in the place, so it'll be good. But I want to ask a question before that. The question is going to be about stay-at-home moms. But I want to go back to a question because Tyree led me to think about something. I am not the hugest fan of Umar Johnson. I don't knock him, but I'm not a huge fan because he just seems like a hustler. I have a problem with hustling, but he's hustling with color, and that feels like if you hustle with color, that means you targeted a group to take advantage of. But he made a point, and I'm not saying I do or disagree with what he said, but he said something about Byron Allen, who is the billionaire guy, and he's dealing with the Supreme Court case, and he's saying how winning that Supreme Court case will help secure civil rights. Losing it may cause issues in the future. And Umar Johnson said, I support and I respect Brother Byron, but the first thing he did was he married a white woman. And I was like, okay, pause. Because I hear what he's saying, but Byron has done more than Umar has. Right. And for him to question him because of who he's married to feels disingenuous because I asked the question, is Umar married? That's the first question I asked. And as far as I've been told, he's not. And so I have a value for it because the thing about it is that does that matter in the grand scheme? And how do Black women look at that to see a Black man ascend to power, that level of power, and then know he chose a woman that didn't look like his mom? So Tyree and Tiffany, I'll let you chime in first. followed by Donnie and Nikki.
So that's a great question. I think it matters, and I'll just be purely anecdotal, I guess. It matters to me. I think if Barack were married to a white woman, I don't think he would have ascended to the level that he would have. It matters to me. And it matters because some of the things that we talked about in terms of, us Black women generally not being the standard of beauty. It also matters because we're typically, and we'll kind of get into this, we're the least likely to be stay-at-home moms. And that's because, we're not, always married to some of the high income generators in the community. So if you're going to be a high income generator in a community and not share that, achievement or provision with a Black woman, that bothers me. And it makes me feel that you are somehow a little bit disingenuous. I mean, we can talk about Clarence Thomas, for example, right? Yeah. He's not in the National Museum of African Americans. Should he be there? I don't know. I mean, but still he, kind of holds a place. And I think him being married to a white woman and him abusing Anita Hill in that way leaves a sour taste in the mouths of Black women. At least it does for me. So it matters to me. It feels that you're not invested in me. It feels that you're not appreciating the way I look. It feels that you're not into, raising a village that, is Black, right? Not one that's mixed or one that's varied or, so I can say it matters to me. Yeah.
So I might be reaching far with this one, but sometimes I think about the desegregation of the Black community was the worst thing that happened, right? That means our Black people said, you know what, the TV person that used to fix my TV is probably not as good as this other person of color who fixes the same TV. That desegregation is starting to come into our choice of spouse. Because ask me the question, when was it okay to go to the other race? When was that made okay? Who said that was okay? Because 10 years, 20 years ago, it wasn't okay. And not only was it okay, it was not okay to even put it in public. So, and I don't want to sound, bigoted in what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you take a Black woman away from a Black man, it devalues his worth. And I know people, it's going to be hard to swallow that. But a Black woman, when you take that away from a Black man, it devalues his worth. And we just talked about it. We can talk about a whole bunch of them that we don't talk about. Clarence Thomas, okay? RJ3, who is he?
Well, he's a former football player, but we can't count that now, right?
I mean, and I could be reaching, but to me, the power of that woman next to that man, and for the man not to know the significance of her power, to say, you know what, I think I'm gonna go this way, because on the other side of the fence, trust me, they tell their people, no, that is not cool.
Yeah. Well, for me, all I can think about is the statistics. All I can think about is, okay, 72% of us are single parents, so there's one less, right? Or we're more likely to be married than a white, there's one less, right? Or we don't have the 401ks, and there's one more example of why we as Black women can't financially lift ourselves up. So that is, to me, what I see. And you make a good point. Sammy Davis Jr. was married to a white woman, and that was kind of controversial then. So you're right. When did it become like, hey, this is cool? Yeah. When
Spike Lee made Jungle Fever, but I'm joking. That's Nikki and Donnie, so you go ahead and chime in on that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I think I have mixed opinions on this topic. And one is just my own personality, and Donnie will probably laugh, but I'm one of the most empathetic people I think you could meet. So I always try to put myself in other people's shoes. And I think like when I agree, like we totally make our men a lot stronger. And I am so proud to be raising my daughter in a household, and my son in a household with two very educated, strong Black people, to teach her to appreciate who she is. I think at the same time, when I go back to when I was younger, Black men gave us away. Yeah. And so I personally have dated on the other side of the race before. I didn't stay on that side. I knew it wasn't what I wanted, but I've dated on that side. And it was because my Black men were not treating me the way I wanted to be treated. And they were also dating on the other side. And so I think, to be fair, it kind of goes down to who's going to treat me the way I want to be treated, whether I'm white or Black. And I think it also comes with a certain, I'm a specific type of female. And so before I met Donnie, I honestly had no intentions of getting married, right? I didn't even want the house. I had my own house. Yep. And so it was kind of to that regard where I don't care whether you're Black, white, red, or purple. If you don't have certain standards and you don't meet those standards for me, we can't be together. And so when I look at it from that perspective, if there is a Black man who finds a white woman who's going to treat him the way he needs to be treated, and it's equal, and you know when you have the men who just don't think Black women are pretty, right? They think they have this pretty trophy wife because she has blonde hair, and they've got it all mixed up. But then when there are men who genuinely have found someone they love. And I'll give you an example. I think Gary Owens and his wife, I think they're a great couple. I think he's really funny. She seems pretty nice. I look at what Terry Crews and his wife. I'm not really a Terry Crews fan, but I think he genuinely loves his wife. I don't think he thinks Black women is ugly. And so I don't want to judge people for who they choose to love and be with. And if my daughter came in and said she wanted to marry a white guy, I wouldn't tell her no. My son, I might try to convince him to go the other way, but I wouldn't tell him no.
I know, but why?
And so I think
why?
Yes.
Because we have boys.
Why would I not?
No, why the gender difference? So because you're saying for your daughter, you wouldn't be as outraged, but for your son, you might kind of try to convince him to go the other way. Why?
I think I know why, but I'm gonna let her answer.
Well, so and the same to what you said, in general, white women have a worse impact on Black men than white men have an impact on Black women.
Oh, okay.
And that's just what I've seen. And so I've seen, and no offense, we go back to the draft. I saw those were disasters waiting to happen. So I saw mom stepping in, right? Not to say that white men are any better, but I've seen, like, just what I've experienced. I've seen more Black men being taken down by white women than Black women being taken down by white men. And I could be biased because I'm a woman.
That goes to show you, like I was saying, the value of a Black woman to a Black man. Yeah. That's what I'm telling you. So we're a little bit different. My grandmother always told me, she can't use your comb, don't bring her home. So I have grown up with Black women my whole life. And for my son to come home and tell my wife that he is going across the fence is disrespectful. Yeah. It's disrespectful. Yeah. Because and it might be because the way because I know the history. Okay, I know the history of what was done to our ancestors, and they know the history. So if I'm going to tell you the history of what was done, and this is not hate, this is reality. Like I said, when was it okay? Because and I don't want, like I said, I don't want to sound bigoted. And yes, Black women, the reason why you were experimenting is because us Black men have failed you. Right. We have failed you. And in some instances, we have failed you because it was already interwoven into the system of how they brought us up.
Right. But I don't feel like you're bigoted. Like I grew up in Los Angeles with a lot of Jewish people. They date Jewish people and marry Jewish people. Yeah. I mean, when I met my husband on the internet, and I had a really good friend, remember Jessica? Yeah. And she only exclusively went on this website called JDate, where it was Jewish people. So, and I don't feel that when I tell, hey, why don't you date outside your race? Get a Black, no. For whatever it is, they've been raised to remain within their culture. And I don't see any problem with that. I guess for me, I take a more hardline approach. I have 2 boys, and to me, it's unacceptable. It would be unacceptable to me. I would be, I would be like that mother that was depicted in that video, you know, and I'll give you an example. I feel like we have raised our sons, for better or for worse, with that same attitude, because my son, you'll laugh, there was like a person who wanted to talk to him, and he made a joke like, oh, Kunta Kinte, ha ha ha. And the person didn't know who Kunta Kinte was. And he was like, I can't continue with this. Like, how do you not know who Kunta Kinte is? And he was like, you've never seen Roots? Like the new one or the old one? Like, I can't continue. This ends today, you know, basically. So, you know, I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't know, but we have raised them with a very strong pro-Black ethic. In their room, before they get to their room, is a picture of Ruby Bridges. You know, that famous Ruby Bridges picture.
Yeah.
You know, so but I feel like I grew up with Jewish, yes, but I feel like I've grown up with Jewish people, and they do the same thing. They keep throwing Anne Frank in your face all day, and I have no problem with Anne Frank. I have absolutely no problem with her, but Emmett Till should receive that same outrage. And nobody says anything about that. So fine, go do Anne Frank, no problem. My kids are going to know Emmett Till. They're going to know, you know, Mobley, you know, the mother, because I'm going to drill it in. Jewish people drill it in. They do, and they got their own country.
I'm gonna drop a lose bomb in here, but because I didn't even mean to go here, but now I have to, right? Because, so for instance, when I was married to a mixed race woman, right? So she had a Black daddy who was absent, and a white mother, but she was foreign. So her perception of Black and white was very different. Tyree, you know firsthand, like the perception of Black in the UK is different than the United States. So I'm gonna say that. So what about mixed race women, right? Because for instance, you have Kamala Harris, Condoleezza Rice. Hold up, I got some. Who else did I say? And I mean, I'm gonna put Candace Owens out there only because she's respected in sort of in a certain circle. But I mean, she's an accomplished person. So what about your children? And then we'll talk about the stay-at-home mom part. What about your children being with someone mixed? Because I think that's interesting, because for me, and if you know me, because I'm not going to pretend, most of the women I've dated have been either mixed race or very fair-skinned Black women. And so my experience, while I understand and appreciate, is different. So I'm listening now. So Nikki and Donnie, if you want to answer that first, and then Tyree and Tiffany, you can follow up.
Well, I'm going to put me on the spot and let Donnie in.
Yeah. So funny thing is, man, it might not even fit in this topic that we're on right now, right? And I kind of got a follow-up question for Tiffany on this, right? My preference would be, you know, that it's somebody African American, right? Like that's what I'm thinking, but we got like 2 young kids, and I sit up at night and kind of just think about different things, right? And I think this is gonna sound hokey, but I want to stick with, like, as long as he's like happy and that person like is from a good family, I think, then the race wouldn't mean that much to me. I mean, I know like what it's like to be a Black man and what we're trying to achieve as Black people, but I guess it's that fear of like you losing that relationship with your child makes you kind of like stay away from stuff like that. So what I was gonna ask Tiffany, because like I'm just thinking about this as I'm talking, like what, like you said you're gonna drill it in their heads, like, you know, be with a Black woman, but what about that day if it came, your son shows up and his senior prom date's a white girl? Like, what would that be like? You know?
Before she answers that, I don't think we drill in their heads to be with a Black woman. We drill in their heads the history of their ancestors.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have a platform of respect.
Yes.
Self-love. I think she's talking more self-love than like love Black people and only see Black people.
Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, and another thing, if you ask them who they value and who they appreciate, our kids, one of the first people that they'll say is our ancestors. That's the first thing that they'll say, because we have communicated that there is power in the history of your ancestors. There is power in you basically being a descendant of enslaved individuals in this country. There is a power in that lineage, and we tell them that all the time. And when they go to school, because school, you know, you guys will see when your kids get school age, there's a lot of holding on to a false sense of superiority narrative. So again, how come we know about the white girl who flew an airplane and got lost, but we don't know about Bessie Coleman? So that's what I tell my kids. That's how it's communicated or drilled in. So when they come with a report that says, what's her name, who got lost, right, and who's never found her plane, I tell my kids, oh, guess what, kids? There's somebody else. Look at this person. You know, her name is Bessie Coleman. And as a matter of fact, because of race or that dichotomy that we talk about, she was Black and a woman. She had to go to France to get her pilot's license. She couldn't even get it in the United States of America. So who is valued more? Somebody who just took the test in the United States and got lost, or somebody who had to leave the country of origin to still pursue her dream and her passion? Who worked harder? And my kids will look at me and say, well, this person. There's no doubt about that. So I don't think we drill it in. We just are constantly presenting a different narrative of superiority that buffers what they come home with. They come home with Amelia Earhart. They come in the house with that. They come in the house with, you know, another thing I learned, my son is into drawing and stuff. I learned that Anne Lowe, a Black woman, was the designer of Jacqueline Kennedy's dress.
Yeah, I knew that too.
Okay, so they come home with some other stuff and I push it back. I refute it. I say, no, what about this person? So right. I think we're drilling it in. To me, I just think we're presenting a different sense of superiority.
The questions he said is if he came home with a mixed race.
So I'm hoping that he doesn't do that, but I definitely would say that I'm not happy with it. And again, I'm in the South now. I grew up in Los Angeles. I don't feel that he's safe, to be honest, having made that decision here in the South.
You know, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, like, and I 100% respect what you're saying and your decisions and everything like that. That was just kind of like more like a philosophical thing, because that's something that's on my mind, like your relationship with your kids when they get older and everything like that. I know I kind of like veered off the beaten path, so I apologize, Lou.
No, that's a great question.
Well, no, because I'm about to veer one more time because this is
Louis, hold on. You know, I didn't catch if Donnie is his name.
Yep.
I didn't catch if Donnie was from the South. Are you from the South, Donnie?
So I'm originally from Ohio, but I'm gonna tell you two stories about like my upbringing, I guess. Right. So I lived in Columbus, Ohio, until I was about 14. I was the only Black kid in my neighborhood, only Black family that I pretty much knew that whole time. Right. And then we moved to South Carolina later. And the funny thing is, my mom like told me, I remember she's gonna kill me for saying this, but she was like, "Don't bring no snowflakes up in here." And then I remember another time. Again, like the funny thing is, she actually had to say that to me because, like I told you, right? Like I grew up like was pretty much the only Black kid around. So yeah, I dated girls of other races and stuff like that. And I also remember another time when I was in South Carolina. I was riding with this girl. We weren't even dating or anything like that, but it was a white girl. And I got home and my dad was like, "Hey man, you can't be riding around in the car with white girls." Like, he grew up in the segregated South, right? So he's like a paranoid Black man, and I understood where he was coming from. I mean, I'd probably say something similar to my son too. So I guess I kind of seen the world through kind of like both sides. If that answered your question, Tyree.
What I was going to say is that when you said, "Does it affect?" and I'm so sorry, Louis. Does it affect the relationship with your child? In the South, and Nikki might know this, when you go to church back in my day, you didn't have a choice. You like wake up and say, "I think I'm going to go to church." You went to church, right? You went to church all day, all Sunday, all Wednesday for Bible study. There's no choice. So I don't care that my son is mad at me because what I think is best for him, I'm going to let that be known.
Right.
But it's still his choice, right? It's still his choice. I'm just gonna tell him you can have the choice you want. But when you come back, I'm gonna tell you, I told you.
So and I think go ahead, Nikki.
No, I just want to say I think that's exactly where I draw the line. That of course I would encourage and I exemplify a strong Black woman so that my son would want to find someone like his mama. Yeah. And my daughter would want to find someone like her dad. But at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of Black families, and I know a lot of Black people who I wouldn't let them in my house. I have family who they're Black, but they can't come in my house.
Amen.
Whereas, and it's just because, like Donnie said, it's your family and how you're raised, which matters the most to me
Yes.
when it comes to who they choose as a spouse. And I would encourage them to continue the Black legacy. But at the same time, if you have, the hood rat, from down the street versus the well-versed and educated girl who's trying to do something for my son, I'm not going to make him choose because of race.
There's a reason why I live in a white neighborhood.
Mhm.
Because I can't live in a Black one. They have my same property value. And that's the same thing you're saying, right? Here's what I'm saying. Even to me, I'm just different, right? I'm just so different. Even to me, Shaquita has more potential than Jennifer. That's just me. That's just how I am.
Yeah.
Mm.
I can get that. So that now I'm going to ask a question because I'm loading it up because we ain't even get to the other one, but I'm loading it up now because I remember this, Tyree, you might not. Yeah, I don't know if I told you this, but I think I told this to Donnie. I remember when I first came back from England and I was engaged, and obviously my ex was mixed. She's biracial, right? And so my family's like, oh, so your fiance's from England. Is she white? Now, the thing that offended me, because I wasn't actually, I was offended by that for a small reason. One, that they thought only white people lived in England. That's what actually bothered me first. But then the second level was, because you know me and how I go, I went different levels. I'm like, well, would you put, and I asked this now, I said it jokingly to my mother, because we were talking about someone else asking the question. I said, well, would they prefer me be gay? And so I think about that. I'm like, so if your child gave you the option, right? I'm gonna bring home this race you don't want. I'm gonna be gay. I'm just being real right now, right? And
Is your gay person Black? Is your gay person Black? I can roll with that. I'm from LA. We cool with that.
Exactly. And so I asked that because the thing about it is that a lot of people are homophobic, and we all have preferences, right? So the thing is, there's a difference between, because I know, Tyree, you said, you're not being bigoted. You're not. There's preference you have for your child. You love them regardless, but you have preference. Now, the thing about it is if you are willing to do harm to the child because of that, which we know none of you are going to do that, that's when it's a bigoted thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what the issue is. And I think that's the greater issue. But Tiffany, you said something that I think is of value, because I'm a teacher and you were a teacher as well. And all of us are teachers in our homes. But specifically, this narrative of we keep seeing the first Black this. In 2000 and whatever, why are we still seeing the first of this? I'm telling you the honest truth. I saw it. This week. I saw something on Twitter. Love Twitter. Donnie know I love Twitter. I saw this on Twitter, and it said something about who was your first Black teacher. Do you know that there are hundreds of students that I taught, and I was the first and for some the only Black teacher they ever had in their life, and I didn't teach them until they was in high school. Yeah. How was that possible?
I mean, well, I'm in.
I do understand, but at the same time, it's like, what?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's simple economics, basically, because, I like numbers. I think it's like 80% of teachers in the United States are white women. That's a lot in K through 12. So pretty much everybody is a white woman for the most part. But it's really purely economics, when before I taught, I was making a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And I kind of pulled myself back after, when my kids were little, so I can kind of have the same schedule as them. But my husband's financial situation allowed me to do that. My husband's financial situation allowed me some flexibility. And that goes to our broader conversation. A lot of Black women don't have that. 84% of us are breadwinners in the household. So we can't make teacher pittance. I mean, my teacher salary basically just got my hair done. Am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it did from us from a financial perspective. So unless you raise the income, you're not going to get any Black women that are mired in student loan debt and typically breadwinners to make $40,000. They're not going to do it. And the same goes for Black men. I think even worse for Black men. It's purely economics. It's not a desirable situation economically for men because of what I'm saying, and also for Black men. That's the reason.
Yeah, and if you pay attention in your neighborhood and you go, let's say you're off of work on a Tuesday and you go to the grocery store, you ain't gonna see a whole bunch of black women shopping. You're gonna see a whole bunch of white women shopping for groceries, but not black women because they're working. Because like we just said, about 80% of them are single. The man is not at the house. And that type of income is not gonna, it's a woman who's by herself cannot work for 40 grand or 50 grand a year and be solid, you know what I mean? So that's probably, that's probably a cause of why kids don't see a black presence in school, you know what I mean? It's always a cause and effect, you know what I mean? There's always a cause and effect.
And it's interesting the topics that we talk about specifically because of how we want our children to be. So speaking of children, Tyree alluded to it a little bit, and I know we've had side conversations about this, but for me, stay-at-home moms is a really big thing. I had a friend, so I think all of you knew my friend Pace. His wife was a stay-at-home mom. She actually graduated college first. They were in college together. She graduated first. She went to work. As soon as he graduated and he was able to work, she stopped working to have a kid. But he's a white guy. And it's interesting because my question is why do black mothers feel it's infeasible? And I say it in the sense that normally black mothers who have husbands go to work. But I think the percentage-wise, and I think Tiffany probably has the number more accurately, percentage-wise, married white women stay home more than married black women. So we'll have the question circle from Donnie and Nikki first, and then follow up with Tyree and Tiffany. Or Tiffany and Tyree, I'm sorry.
Talking from my personal perspective, and then I think it may hurt some feelings for people who listen. But part of it for me, when I grew up, I had no security in the fact that I would marry a black man that would take care of me. So I was raised to take care of myself. My dad was in the military, so I went to the military. I found my own way to pay for college. I knew I was going to make money and take care of myself. I was actually a single mom for a while in New York City, and I took care of myself. And so right now at this point, I don't think it's not feasible for me to work from home, but I make I wouldn't say a lot of, I make a good amount of money.
Don't be shocked.
And with my children, being so small, it wouldn't be worth it for me to work from home or have my own side business when I work from home and I still take care of my kids. And that's the kind of thing about black women, is that we find a way to get it done when people can't think it can't be done. And so if Donnie wanted to be a millionaire and let me stay home where I could keep my Amazon habit and all that other stuff, I'd be happy to stay home. But knowing that I have things that I want, things that I like, and I like to have control over being able to do what I want to do, I work and I still take care of my kids. And so I think my daughter will say she's not neglected, right? Like I spend a lot of time with my kids. When she was first born, I actually worked from home. I stayed out on maternity leave for 6 months. And then I went to my VP at the time. I was like, listen, I can't stay in New York. I want to go to North Carolina to be with my family because my kid is what matters most to me. And I worked from home for 3 years. So my daughter had a nanny for 3 years where she got all of my attention. And so I was able to juggle and manage both. And even with my son, I did the same thing. I told my company, you have to let me work from home. I'm not leaving my 4-month-old son. So we're going to work something out. And that's where you have to value yourself and kind of own that and know that you can have the best of both worlds. And I think that goes back from how I was raised, where I knew I had to take care of myself. And that means I'm going to have to take care of my children. And that's more than just being at home with them. That's providing for them, being at home with them, and showing them that they also can do things that other people can't be done.
All right. And Tyree, and Tiffany and Tyree.
You want me to go first?
No, I'll go first. What were we going to say?
Because, I'm going to take it all the way back
To what?
to why.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say, I try to break things down a little bit. Okay, so I had a similar background. I mean, and my husband can attest to that. I, as a kid, dreamt of a corner office and a Louis Vuitton briefcase. Mm-hmm. Like, that was what I dreamt of. I didn't dream of kids and that, but that was mainly just because of the way I was raised. I was raised with my older brother, and he had 4 boys and me. So I sometimes think that he didn't realize that I was a girl. And I think, honey, you can kind of attest to that.
Yeah.
I'm more like a dude a little bit, just because my brother just threw me in with the boys. So I had a lot of aspirations, and kind of that's what I wanted. And you know, when I met my husband, I was already I was in graduate school by the time I met you, and you know, and I didn't have kids until I was 30. I didn't have Zach until I was 31, because I turned. So because I was busy, I was busy trying to get that Louis Vuitton briefcase, that corner office. But I think I can speak for myself that I am very unique. The statistics bear out that most Black women are in a couple of things. One, in sort of low wage jobs, retail and things, so they're not allowed to have the flexibility and say, you know, hey, I want to do this, or this is going to be my work arrangement. And it's not really a reality for them to work from home. And I think we're seeing this with the whole COVID-19. You know, a lot of Black women are, you know, at the front line working in retail jobs where they don't kind of have that flexibility. But with my oldest son, I did not go back to work until he was almost 4 years old. And I was just finishing up my graduate degree. So I went to school twice a week and kind of took him to a little daycare. But for the most part, I was home with him. And what I realized was I had no peer. So I'm going to all these things, you know, taking him to the play date and this and that. And I just realized one day, like, how come I don't see any other Black people, like, or Black moms? Like, what the heck is this about? Where is my peer? And that's when I started doing research, because my mom didn't stay at home, you know. So that's when I realized we're really not afforded, for the most part, that opportunity to stay at home, whether or not you want to or not. For the most part, we're not financially afforded that opportunity. And we could talk about that, you know, why. But I just was grateful for that opportunity. And then as a teacher, I again realized that a lot of and I'm just going to speak about Black children, were behind. You know, they were pretty much raised by granny and grandma and auntie and them while they're, and I was in an urban, you know, school, and they weren't getting kind of that one-on-one, you know, where they were spoken to or read to or whatever. And it was the reason why they were delayed. You know, our kids are not unintelligent, but they're just not getting the stimulation and the enrichment that some of their higher income peers are. And I think a lot of that has to do with moms not being available, dads not being available. You know, I tell my husband, I'm pretty conservative, you know, and what I see is my husband and I together, what we are able to give my children are a couple things: more money and more supervision. Right? So, because if you're just a single parent, it's hard for you to supervise your kids. So they're watching TV when they shouldn't be, or, you know, or listening to music whereas if you have two bodies, there's consistent supervision, or in theory, there's consistent supervision, and then hopefully there's some additional income. So, you know, I would like to see Black women afforded that opportunity to stay at home, whether or not they choose to or not. It would be nice for conditions to be set up so that they can have those same opportunities.
I have a quick question. So how much of that do you think is attributed to family planning? Because the thing about it is that if we look at statistics, we could use teenage pregnancy or single mother pregnancy. I think family planning really plays a huge role in the ability to actually think about having a stay-at-home mother. So how much of that is the family planning portion of that? I think, Nikki, you were going to go. So, Nikki, you can go ahead, or Tiffany, either one.
So me personally, again, I think most of mine is based on personal experience, not necessarily data and, you know, statistics or the vast majority. But for me personally, more of mine was based less on family planning, because I had no plans for that family that I ended up with in New York at the time. Like I said, I was a single mom. And more on education, and how are we making sure that our Black females are educated and have the ability to go into the workforce and demand certain levels of salary and advancement in their career. And obviously, if you have a child when you're younger, that kind of stifles that a little bit. But I think after you get to a certain point where going to college wasn't an option for me, and I was the first in my family to go to college, and so it wasn't that I had this perfect example of a family. It was just that I knew what I wanted to do. And so it's education to me had more bearing on that than family planning, because like I said, I was educated, I had my master's, I had a great job, And so I didn't plan, and I ended up with, being a single mom, but I was still able to make it work because I had a good education and a good job.
Okay, so it's not necessarily necessary. Tiffany, you got anything, or Tyree?
For me, I think it's I think family planning plays a role. I do, like I said, I didn't have a kid until I was 31 years old. And then I had my second, I was called a geriatric pregnancy. When you're over 35, there's actual term for it. And you got to take more tests and pee in more cups and all this kind of stuff. So I think family planning is a good piece of it. But I think even more is access to the higher income earning spouses. And that goes back to our conversation about the Byron Allens and these people who, when they get into these higher income levels, they're not choosing us. So it has to do with access to, because the cost of living has increased, right? Housing is more, student loans are more, health insurance is more. So if we as Black women don't have access to spouses that can generate the level of income that allows us to stay home, we're constantly going to be kind of, falling behind. And I think the third piece of that is loans. Black women are one of the highest educated demographics in the country.
Is the highest.
And with that comes student loans. So you got to, out the gate, you got a $700, $800 bill, that you have to pay for, that maybe some of your white counterparts don't do that. I know in the neighborhood that I live in, when I first moved here, I was talking to one of the white women across the street, and I was saying something, oh yeah, when I went to college. And she said, you went to college? I was like, what the heck? So most of the women in my subdivision have not gone to college. Or maybe they did a little bit and then they kind of found their husband and they stopped going to school. So and I think kind of you could attest to this, most of them women here do not have college education. So they don't have that $700, somebody's got to pay for that. So it's kind of threefold. It's family planning, it's higher income spouses, and it's unfortunately Black women are sort of mired in this, upper education student loan debacle that requires us to get out there and hustle.
I think the original question was, why don't Black women work from home? Was that?
Well, why stay-at-home moms and have all that?
Stay-at-home mom
not feasible for us.
And I think Nikki started off and she said, her having somebody to take care of her was never an option. Yeah. Whereas in other communities, it is the option.
It's the only option.
It's what you're trained to do.
Exactly. What you're trying to do. The reason why our women are trained to be independent is because they took the men from them a long time ago. And they learned back in the day, a long time ago, that they could not depend on us because we didn't possess the power to take care of them. So they had to figure it out on their own, and they've been doing it for years. So that's how Nikki was able, to have that and that thought in her mind, like, I have to be successful. I have to be successful.
And I'll give you guys some. The funny thing is, my mom actually didn't work. My dad was the breadwinner, and my mom stayed at home. And so it was actually that picture that I didn't want. I wanted to own my own life.
Right.
And so another question that I think is really relevant to this, and Tiffany, you kind of alluded to it. So you and Tyree will go first, and then Donnie and Nikki. Is, do Black women have relationship options outside of Black men? And do they even want them? Now, I understand that this is your perspective, but just sort of looking at the larger scope, what do you think? Do they have options outside of Black men? And do they want those options?
Yes, they have options. You see them leaving us. They have, here's now that Black women are not a curse anymore. White men see their relevance. They see it more than we do at times. So any woman that's been, let's take for example, Halle Berry. She said, I tried to give them a chance. They wouldn't act right. So she had to go somewhere else. Our women are loyal to us first. And then when they can't find somebody to treat them right, they go elsewhere. They're the commodity. And I think people know that. The only thing is, us Black men don't.
Right.
How much is it that, quick question, how much of that is the woman's selection process though? Because the woman's choosing, because we understand it different as men, and Donnie and Tyree, you can attest to this, from a male perspective, women choose men. Men don't choose women. So,
yep.
I feel like that still kind of falls on women, right?
You know, in the wild, a lion, right, has to show that he is capable of providing and protecting for his woman
to get
the top.
Right.
Okay. When a black woman is finding her mate, that is what she's doing.
Yeah.
She's like, can he take care of me? What is he? And 9 times out of 10, she can't cross out but 2 things on her list. So she's out. So tell me this: when you're in a wild and you see a little skimpy little lion, and then you see a big old hairy lion, which one you picking?
Right.
Don't worry, I'll wait.
Yeah, I'll just say I dated a white person before, and he was very, very nice. I wouldn't say anything disparaging.
Watch your tone.
I wouldn't. But I felt like weird relating to him in my kind of, and I hate to use the word aggressive manner, but I just felt like weird, like he didn't, and I'll give you an example, okay? Like we were getting ready to go out somewhere and he came to my house and I had a box in the corner. I had an apartment and I had a box in the corner where I had just bought a table. And I feel like if I was dating a black guy and he came in my house and he saw the box, he would have said, do you need somebody to, or if he didn't, I would say, you see that box in the corner? And he would have understood what that meant. You know what I'm saying? Like I dated the white guy and he just looked at the box in the corner, and I like walked over to the box in the corner. I'm like talking about the box in the corner. And I'm like, like, I know you see this box in the corner. Like, what is your plan to resolve this? So I just felt like weird relating to him in those ways that we as black women, carry ourselves and relate. And I didn't want to try to negate that or reduce that or change that up, I guess. I didn't want to be like, hey, can you get a wrench, please, and take care of this? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be my normal, you better go and fix that box in the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't crazy, get that box. So I just felt weird. So do we have other options? Yes. But me personally, I'm good. His brother's all that. This brother in particular.
All right, Nikki, how about you?
I'll agree that, of course, we have options, but I kind of alluded to this before. I've dealt in the other option. At the end of the day, obviously my husband was who I chose, and it wasn't necessarily because he was black, but it goes back to what Tiffany was saying. Him and I are automatically related, and when you date outside of your race and you try with other things, it's hard to be your genuine self. So certain things I can say to Donnie, like we joke around, like when we first met, about our black card. Right. So he's got his black card, right? We got the black card. When you date outside your race, sometimes they don't have that black card. So certain things they just can't relate to. And for me personally, it was a lot of how I was raised in like my family. It would be hard for me to bring certain people outside of our race into my family. And because, as a black person, you got different types of people in your family, and you always have that one cousin that does this or this one auntie that does that. And outside of your race, they may not get that. So they may come in and say the wrong thing or look at someone wrong, and it just won't go well.
I understand. So I got one more question before we start to wrap up. And I think this one is specifically just to magnify the power of Black women. So we talked about the fact that Black women are basically hyper visible. And so my question is, how do Black women take advantage of being hyper visible, yet being invisible to society? Because they're invisible to society, but they're hyper visible. And that's really weird to think about that, but it's true, because you see Black women, but we ignore them. So how can Black women take advantage of that to advance themselves and the culture? And so, Nikki, I'll have you go first, and then Tiffany.
Sorry, I was on mute. So I'll say part of it is, I think, showing up, and I got this from actually one of my like HR people who's also a Black woman, but she's our EVP of diversity where I work, and she was pretty much like, you show up as yourself, and you continue to be yourself. And so what that means to me is that I can often be in a room where I'm the only Black person. So what that tells me is that the other people around the table or within the organization or group, and it's not just in my professional career, it was even when I was in college, even in some of my social circles where I'm at the really nice restaurant and you look around and you're the only Black person. And what it meant to me was that the other people didn't appreciate true Blackness, right? Like I was their token, let's say. I was the one they appreciated. And so what I do in those circumstances, I make sure that they understand, or those people around me know, why I am appreciated. And it's not because I'm Black, I'll be honest with you. It's because I am who I am. And yes, I just happen to be Black, and I own that, and I love it, but I am who I am, and I could go toe to toe with Black, white, Indian, or anything. And that for me, that's kind of how I bring it in, is that don't look at people. And that's kind of why my answer was to, on the dating piece, I don't necessarily look at people as their race, because that's only part of their story. And so I think it's important that in order, if we really want to be accepted in society and we want to be visible in society, we have to allow people to see us for who we are outside of just our race.
All right. And Tiffany and Tyreek?
No.
Okay. So for me, I feel like in order for us, when I think of being visible, I think of enforcing our narrative. And I think in order to do that, a couple things need to happen. I think one, I wish that and I know we're not a monolith and Black people are kind of all, but I feel like I wish that we could, as a society, really understand and articulate the issues that plague us. Like have a 4-point plan, right? Like this number one thing, is the top thing that's plaguing us as a community. This, like 4 things that we can say, we need to get these things done. So I feel like we need to have a little bit more clarity as to what plagues us as a society, one. And I also think that and I think this has come up with the whole Hillary and Barack and kind of all this stuff, but Black women vote more than any other demographic in this country. But we don't have anything to show for it. So, I think there's just the one Black senator and so we're not enforcing our demands, our policy demands, and so I think we need to do a better job of getting back control, getting back power, and enforcing our narrative. And I think in order to do that, we've got to say, these 4 things are what we want. And that needs to continue, because other communities do that. Hispanics like, hey, give me immigration. Give me the dreamers. Give me this. Give me that. Right? The Jews
you got Barack on there, CC Forte.
Exactly. You have the Jews saying, hey, whatever, you need to beat up Palestine or whatever it is that they want. We need to have more clarity as to what plagues us as a society, and don't be embarrassed about that.
Yeah.
Don't be embarrassed about saying, hey, 72% of us are this, or don't be embarrassed about that. And then also, if we're going to vote for Joe Biden, which we do in numbers, we got to get some Supreme Court nomination. How is it that there's been no Black women on the Supreme Court? It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It makes again, when we're the most educated, it doesn't make any sense. So clearly define our issues and kind of, be in legislation a little bit more, I think.
I fully support that. And I was going to ask, I just wanted to make a point really quickly before we start to wrap up. Tyree, you said something about it, and Donnie and I have talked about this before. There's something that I think people miss a lot. Black Americans are conservative. People don't want to talk about that, but they are conservative. They're not Republicans, but they're conservative. If they understood that and put forth a person like that, I think they would feel a connection. Like, I'm going to be 100 about this, and people don't want to talk about this. Obama was super conservative. Don't nobody want to talk about that, but he was very conservative. He's very conservative. But I just wanted to say that because you all brought that up. And another thing I wanted to say, and you can chime in on this if you want to, and the other point is, there's a difference between being pro-Black or uplifting your tribe and being anti something else. I think people need to make sure they understand it. Because the thing about it is I would dare to say every one of us in this conversation is dated outside of our race. So we can't say we hate other races, because I have some of the best friends in life that are not Black people. And I know you all have friends that are not Black people. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And so if you want to chime in on anything with that, I'll let you before I go to the final word.
What do I want to chime in on? Lord have mercy.
Yeah, when you say pro and anti, I think of when people say you're racist, but then you have people that are anti-racist. And anti-racist is like, if you see it, you speak up. So anti is like you're taking like an action towards something.
Yeah. I think that the older I get and the more situations that I am put in, whether it be my kids or my professional life, I go back to when the Black Panthers were here, the real Black Panthers were here. And they had a sense of pride, community, and accomplishment. And somewhere along the way, we have lost all of that for our community, for our women, for the people who came before us, all of it. We have no sense of identity. None of we try to mimic things that we think is okay, but we don't have a sense of identity, and it's because it was been taken away from us. And I wish that one of the biggest identities is our Black women. They have been everything, and if we don't protect that sacred specimen, who knows what would happen if the Black woman didn't survive or wasn't as strong as she is. I wouldn't be here. I mean, I was raised by a single mom. I wouldn't be here. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is very, we have to find a way to uplift that and encourage our women to say, you know what? I know the Bible told you that you had to be the back and tell us and listen to what we have to do, but that's really not true. You know what I'm saying? The Bible told the man, love the woman as God loved the church, willing to sacrifice and die for her. And that's how we have to carry out how we perceive our women. And from here on.
All right. Donnie, Nikki,
I just want to add kind of to that same vein that I think it is important for us to regain that kind of sense of community and protecting each other and supporting. But I think it's also important that us as Black women, and kind of from my stance, not to alienate from the man, but to also do what we can to uplift each other and to get to that next level with or without the help that we need, because no matter what, it's not always going to be there. And so we have to find avenues and ways for Black women to advance without the support, because they're not going to give it to us. And I had to learn that, right? They're just not. You're going to have to take it in most cases. Yeah. And so how do we give our Black women a platform and the security and the thoughtfulness and the education and the love also, right? Black women always feel that we got to fight and it's so hard, but we also love each other, and there's a lot of love out there. And so it's like, how do we give them that same appreciation that the other races have given their women? Yeah. And as a woman, how do I make it for other women?
Yeah, but don't be like the beehive. I'm joking. Don't let the beehive. Don't let them get me. Don't let them get me. All right.
Podcast over.
Basically. All right, so really quickly, another thing that you all said, and I just thought it was worthy of just mentioning this, but this is my opinion. While I agree with unification, I think it's very powerful and it makes sense. They try to do it with the whole USA American flag thing. But I think unity for Black Americans, and I'm very specific about what I'm saying, unity for Black Americans, generational Black Americans, is difficult because there's no foundation that exists. They always go back to slavery, and while slavery did exist, now is the time to create a foundation. There's never too late to create a foundation, so you have to find the time to do that. But with that being said, the podcast is called Voices because I love to highlight the voices of contributors to this experiment in life of making sure that our voices and our opinions are archived throughout time. So with that being said, I like to have the final voice to be of that for the people who have contributed to the episode and to the show. I thank you so very much for being a part of the show and for giving voice to an issue that really needed a voice. So we will close out with the final word, where we will have, as I lose my train of thought, Nikki and Donnie will go first, and then Tyree and Tiffany will close us out. So again, I thank you, and I leave the floor to you.
So Nikki's not gonna let me. not gonna carry my water anymore as she did for the whole podcast. So I guess I gotta actually talk now. Yeah, I just want to say, thanks for having us, and I think it was a good conversation to have. It's definitely something interesting. I kind of thought about this during the end, with what Tyree said, which I 100% agree with. That Black men do got to do a better job of supporting and being there for our Black women. And I think another thing too, that a different angle to look at it from is I think Black men got a lot to learn from Black women as well, right? If you look at like all the advancements for the Black race, like as far as like education goes, careers, everything like that. I mean, that's pretty much been done by Black women. I mean, they've accelerated things a lot more than Black men have since the civil rights movement, pretty much, right? So a lot for us to learn from them.
I, once again, Louis, I thank you for your foresight, your ability to keep the ball moving. I also feel some sort of connection with my brother on the other end. It's very, very seldom that we get to have these conversations where we're trying to uplift our women, but brother, I'm trying to uplift you. I'm trying to uplift Louis. You know, sometimes us as brothers don't have that way to say, hey man, you're doing a great job, man. I'm glad to see you. You know, you see brothers in the store with their kids holding, hey man, you're doing a good job. We don't do that to ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So just to get that opportunity, I wanted to say, hey, I just met you a couple of hours ago, man, and I appreciate you. And I don't know you, but I love you. I love you. I love your family. I know what you're trying to do. I give you more blessings and more blessings you can receive. And the same thing for you, Louis, man. I appreciate you. I love you like I always love you, like a brother, man. And just thank you for just giving us the opportunity to share our thoughts on your platform, sir.
All right, Tiffany, Nikki, anything? I mean, I know y'all did carry the conversation, but I'll give you the opportunity as well.
I'll just encourage my Black mothers out there who are listening, because that's why I'm on mute, because I'm a mother now. I'm playing Uno with my daughter. and so, you know, as a Black woman, that's one of the best things about, and if I had to choose, and I'll be honest, and it may not be great to end, it may be a different podcast, but I love being a woman. Mm. And so it's hard being a woman in general. So then when you add on being a Black woman, you just get all the credit, right? Because it's just, you just have to be a specific type of specimen to be a Black woman. Yeah. And then to raise Black children who are proud of themselves, who are educated, and who don't even think like failure is not an option for my children. And it's not because I'm going to put them through military school or anything like that, but it's because I'm going to give them the values and the opportunity to advance further than me or my husband has.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Tiffany?
Yes, I mean, as Nikki, as you were talking, I feel like I was in church getting Holy Ghost for sure. You know, just everything that you said, you know, is kind of, you know, I feel the same way. I love being a woman. I love being a mother. I love being a wife. But oftentimes, I think one of the things I realize is, it's like people say, if you look around the room and you don't see yourself, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I feel like I look around the room, you know, my house, my education, my children, my schools that they go to, the things that we, you know, are affording our children, but I continue to look around the room and I don't see me. and I want that to change. Yeah. You know, I feel that I'm blessed, you know, I'm economically grateful, I have a lot of opportunities, but I continue to look around the room and I don't see myself. And that bothers me. And until I can see myself, you know, I guess I'm just still going to have that hunger and desire to see myself in the boardroom.
Yeah, I think Jay-Z had a line that said, you know, shout out to Will, what's up to O? That ain't enough. We're going to need 1 million more. You know what I mean? So he was saying, you know, we got Oprah Winfrey, we got Will Smith, but it's not enough. We need more. You know, we need more. What's the Spanish word for that?
Mas.
Mas.